What causes power loss in your car? Many other times you may be driving your car and then you experience difference in power than how it was previously. You realize that maybe your car is not performing as it used to be, and you're wondering what could be the issue. So let's understand one thing. For power to be produced by the engine, there has to be combustion. And there are three factors that need to be present for combustion to happen. Number one, it's fuel. Number two, it's oxygen. And number three, it's heat. When these three factors are present, proper combustion happens. However, if one of them is compromised on, then that simply means that your power production will be compromised. Let's start with the fuel. And when it comes to the fuel, we will talk about the fuel injection system. And fuel injection system comprises quite a number of components. We have the fuel pump, we have the fuel filter, we have the fuel injectors, we have the injector pump. Okay, there are quite a number. So if any of those components is faulty or it's not functioning as it should, then you'll experience power loss. That's simply because the right amount of fuel will not be sent into the combustion chamber for proper combustion to happen. And if the proper fuel level is not sent to the engine, then it simply means that the power produced will be compromised. All right, so how do you go about fixing this? If maybe it's your fuel pump that is faulty, just replace the fuel pump. If it's your fuel filter that's clogged up, ensure that you replace it with a better fuel filter. If it's your injector nozzles that are clogged up, ensure that you unclog them and replace them with better ones. All right? Then from there, you will know that your fuel injection system is working perfectly. Now on to number two, we have oxygen. Oxygen is mandatory for combustion to happen. And oxygen only gets into the car through the air intake system. And the air intake system has quite a number of parts. It has a throttle body, we have the mass airflow sensor, we have the air filter. So what is the purpose of a throttle body? The purpose of a throttle body, it's more like a gate. Let me call it a gate because it opens to allow air to get into the combustion chamber and also closes. When you step on the accelerator, what you are regulating is how far does the throttle body open. So if the throttle body is clogged up, it results into it getting sticky. And now when it's sticky, now it cannot open as it should. There will be a lot of restriction, and now that will result into compromising of the air quantity that is getting into your combustion chamber. So if you have a clogged throttle body, you just clean it up. This is something that you can actually do from home. Now let's talk about the MAF, or the mass airflow sensor. Now this one is now the bridge between the intake system and the ECU. What do I mean by that? The mass airflow sensor communicates to the ECU the quantity of air that has been allowed into the combustion chamber. So if the mass airflow sensor is faulty, that simply means it will give the wrong information to the ECU. And now when the wrong information is sent to the ECU, it simply means that power production will be compromised, and now that will result into loss of power. So if your mass airflow sensor is faulty, just replace it and you will solve the issue of power loss. All right? Now, air filter. Let me give you a very simple illustration of an air filter. Air filter is the nose of your car, and it's the one that is in charge of trapping all the dirt from the air that is being sucked into the atmosphere, ensuring that only clean air gets into the combustion chamber. So over time, if you don't change it regularly, the air filter gets clogged up. And now what that means is that you're blocking the nose of your car. And now when you block the nose of your car, it simply means that you have restricted the air intake flow into the combustion chamber. And now that will result into power loss in your car. That's because power production will be compromised on. So how do you solve this? Always ensure that you change your air filter regularly, especially if you're in dusty places. Consider changing the air filter as often as possible. That is to ensure that proper air intake is getting to the combustion chamber so that you don't end up compromising on the power production of your car. So on to the next one, that is heat or spark. Spark plug is the one that is responsible for producing the spark that ignites the air fuel mixture. So if the spark plugs are faulty, that simply means that the ignition process will be affected, and now that will result into loss of power. How about the ignition coils? The ignition coils are responsible for the generation of the spark. So if the ignition coils are faulty, it simply means that the spark generation will be compromised, and now that will result into loss of power because power production will be compromised, right? Now, over here, I've written the turbo. And the reason is why I've set it apart is because not all cars come with a turbo. Now, turbo is very much responsible for the air intake system, or the air, pulling in the air into the combustion chamber. Now, when your turbo is faulty, it simply means that the air intake process has been affected. When the air intake is not as it should, it will result into loss of power. Now, as for these ones that I've highlighted, they all fall under the engine, right? These ones are factors that are related to the engine. And now, before I proceed on to the next one, there is something we call loss of compression. Compression, each and every engine operates on compression ratios. And now, the compression ratios depend or determine how much power your engine produces. So, what can result into loss of compression? Number one is worn out piston rings. If the piston rings are worn out, it simply means that the compression ratio of your engine has been affected. And if the compression ratio has been affected, it simply means that there will be low power produced. Okay? Now, another thing that can result into loss of compression is worn out valve seals. We all know we have the inlet valve and the exhaust valve. If the valve seals are worn out, it simply means that some of the air fuel mixture or some of the compressed air fuel mixture will find its way out. You know, when it finds its way out, it simply means that power production will be affected. And now, power loss will happen on your car. Now, these ones are specifically for the engine. And now on to the next one is what I call the gearbox issues. So, if you experience poor or delayed shifting, that is an issue with your gearbox. Now, when it comes to CVT gearbox, you'll experience slipping in CVTs. You know, when we come to the manual cars, you will experience the clutch slipping in manual cars. So how do you go about this? When you have a gearbox issue, first of all, ensure that you've used the right transmission fluid. Number two, ensure that the transmission fluid is the correct quantity. Right? After you ensure it's the correct quantity, then do regular servicing of the transmission. When you do that, you will ensure that the gearbox is working perfectly, and any gearbox related issue, you've already eliminated it. Now, let me go on to something that is very common or very popular with modern cars. And that is something, especially modern diesel cars. We have something we call let me write it over here, DPF. When the DPF gets clogged up, it will also result into power loss. Because when the DPF is clogged up, it simply means that the exhaust system is not working as it should, and now that will result into power loss. Something else that is also very common is something we call the oxygen sensor. Oxygen sensor. So when the oxygen sensor is faulty, it will also result into power loss in your car. So how do you go about this? When it comes to the DPF, I've talked previously and I've insisted, all you need to do is do a DPF delete and your car will be good. When we come to the oxygen sensor, if the issue is with the oxygen sensor, just replace it with a new one. Once you do the replacement, you're good to go. Something else, when you experience power loss, there are things that you can solve from the comfort of your home. Take, for instance, the issue with the air intake system. When it comes to the air filter, it is easily accessible. You don't require a mechanic to change an air filter. That is something that you can do. When it comes to the mass airflow sensor, that is also something that you can do by yourself. When it comes to the adaptive throttle body, all you need is a chalk cleaner. With a chalk cleaner, you just clean your throttle body and your car is good to go. But now when it comes to complex issues, maybe like the fuel injection system, I would caution you, always ensure that you go to a trusted mechanic and they will sort out the issues for you. When we come to spark plugs, kindly consult a technician. When it comes to the gearbox issues, always go to a trusted mechanic who will ensure that everything is sorted out and your car is as good as new. Let me clarify something about the gearbox issues. If maybe the issue has been persistent for long and it's really been a challenge through and through, consider replacing the gearbox. Don't do a gearbox rebuild. Consider replacing so that you can have a longer time with your car and enjoy a very comfortable drive in your car. So there you have it. I hope these are just not all the reasons. These are the ones I could come up with. So if you've got any more reasons, kindly put them in the comment section below. And kindly, if you've not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, kindly subscribe. This is the place where I share informative, educational videos. So thank you.